Hey everybody, welcome back. What I got for you today is the King of Cups as the obstacle, obstruction, and the Empress as the opportunity. So let's have a look at this guy here. First of all, by the way, just I like the differences. Sometimes the obstacle and the opportunity are very closely related, but with this, for one, there's definitely we've got like a masculine male thing and a feminine female man woman uh, polarity, and then also this is cups, feelings, emotions, passions, maybe culture, beliefs, things like this on an emotional level. The Empress, I think, is very much so about nature and largely the qualities that are usually more present in the coins, in the pentacles. So like earth, nature, value, that kind of just the physical reality of the world. So I think some broad strokes of this are like it's it's maybe not a good time to do things to approach things from an emotional angle. It's practical, real world nurturing real physical things as opposed to maybe nurturing our feelings. Um, but yeah, but this guy, who is this guy? Does he have a drinking problem or what? We got we recently did the Six of Cups, which I described as a, a state of a state of balance, emotional equilibrium, almost perfection, but nonetheless a highly limited state of emotional balance. So it's the kind of emotional balance that you can get when you have a very limited uh, stable of emotions, so to speak, when you've experienced very little. Maybe when if you've been really sheltered emotionally, or you've been growing up in a very sort of traditional environment that is very specific about the few things that are good and the few things that are bad. And the king that follows, in my opinion, queens are sort of masters of their element, and then kings are in charge of negotiating between that element and the outside world. So whereas the queen is in charge with the entire economy of the suit, and let's say in this case, cups, emotions, feelings, just being completely present and knowledgeable and experienced within one's own emotional realm, the king is more in a position of mediation between what already exists within and what is happening outside. So this the emotional state of this king, I think, in a lot of ways, is someone who is coming from this environment of well structured but nonetheless limited emotional experiences and is looking out into the world for other things, for new feelings, for new experiences, new emotions, and possibly also even the more complex human social structures that are built upon them. There are cultures that at their heart have something like modesty, piety, right? It's based on an emotional state. There are other cultures that are concerned with glorious warlike conquest because the emotion that's at the heart of their culture is like bravery, courage, the abolition of fear, let's say. Uh, so yeah, this king I think kind of represents looking outside, looking for new things, and the card that follows, the seven. This is largely the kind of just chaotic fantasy of all the different possible things that could be out there. That in a lot of ways, it's kind of like I kind of see it as a inspiring but potentially negative card because it's so chaotic. It's easy for a person to lose themselves in all of these new emotions or the possibilities of all these new emotions. But yeah, the king, especially here as an obstacle or as a warning, I think the warning here would be to, that maybe this isn't the time to start exploring, uh, start exploring your surroundings. It's not a good time to start expanding your emotional boundaries. So, this could relate in in love life in terms of either starting a relationship or beginning an affair, getting involved with someone else. It could be experimenting with any emotions. I kind of see people's lives often divided into these eras or epochs where they have they have some emotional state that they consider to be the most virtuous one. There's often certain teenage years, like rebellion, angst, that kind of like resistance to the other. That's like the predominant emotion. Sometimes people experiment with weakness and frailty and sadness. Sometimes people experiment with insanity or absurdity. But but yeah, so I think this would kind of symbolize like maybe this is not the best time to start looking outside of those kind of well-defined boundaries. They may be limited, but maybe just this isn't the time for it, or at least this requires some reflection upon what that kind of choice might entail, what it might be taking you away from, stability, what it might be potentially taking you to in a negative sense, which is just chaos, like which is great in a lot of ways because it's full of opportunities, but at the same time, if 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 the reason that a person is looking for more new experiences is because they don't feel quite um, I don't know, like their personality, their identity, their life isn't exactly where it is. It's like, you might come across something that you like in the chaos of all those new different possibilities, but you have no guarantees that you're going to get what you think you're going to get. You're kind of leaving yourself wide open when you open yourself up to that. Also, the possibility for like opening yourself up to spiritual experiences. If you're contemplating joining a cult, today might not be the best day to do it. Possibly even experimenting with like psychedelics or something along those lines. Even drinking for that matter. A lot of people I think see this card as someone who's got a drinking problem. um, but yeah, so that's the kind of warning or potential obstacle. And then as far as the opportunity here, I think this is one of those cards where it's easy to like here's another interesting difference between these two. I think the court cards, I think these describe human personalities directly. Like they represent human archetypes, types of people, things that people do. I think that the major arcana is more representative of more abstract concepts and ideas. It just does so with the use of imagery of human beings. But I think this card is depicting this woman more as a symbol, whereas the King of Cups is depicting a person, as trying to be a more literal in terms of its symbolism. But yeah, I think the opportunity here lies um, in the places where nature is producing the most. The twin to this card in a way is Arcanum 13, which in the Marseille deck doesn't even have a name, but in the Waite deck it's the Death card. And I think both of them kind of symbolize a very similar thing. It's this incredible kind of blossoming of nature, of the physical world, and it's a world that doesn't yet concern itself with humans, with human desires and feelings and ideas and actions. This is like in the pre-human primordial sort of world. This is the one side of nature, the spring, the blossoming, the uncontrollable, often irresponsible growth, but nonetheless just growth and abundance. And then the flip side of this card is the death card, which is you know the the decay and sort of collapse, which ultimately leads to just another cycle of recycling. Like it's a constant, death and rebirth. cycle. In fact, the Marseille card, the Empress is holding this shield with this. I like to think of that as being like a phoenix, symbolizing that kind of endless rebirth of nature. But yeah, so this card. I think it helps to think about this card in the context of being paired up with the death card as just it's a force of nature. It's not like often when people think of Mother Nature, they don't credit Mother Nature as being the thing that destroys and murders all living things. They think of it just as like, oh, it's the beautiful life-giving thing, but that's only one half of the story. So nonetheless, I think the opportunity here is, you know, maybe to look for a place where there is growth happening, and that is a place of opportunity. So in business, it could be any sort of, in career or business, it could be any sort of place of where there's like an expansion happening. An opportunity might be in I don't know, the new branch office that's opening up, something along those lines, new departments, um, with with a more practical approach. It could be literally something like gardening, growing food, working the land, terraforming the land, going out into going out into nature. It kind of coincides with you know spring for where I am, so it's like being aware of that and the kind of opportunities that it provides. Um, and yeah, and also symbolically, uh, as as that kind of nature mother figure, there could be an opportunity in your relationship with your mother, some sort of nurturing figure, or opportunities in considering or contemplating your your own role that you play as a nurturing individual. But yeah, this is kind of conceptually what this card symbolizes. And focusing on these different aspects daily, I think, just helps to make us a little bit more mindful. I find it really useful. I don't usually really talk about the meta the meta value of the tarot as opposed to the specific meanings, but I find it really fascinating how easy it is to spend a month living life in a manner that seems like it's you know there's a lot of variability. You do different things. After a month, you can look back and realize that you've kind of just been doing like 7 or 8 things. There isn't, if you keep going to the same places, if you're essentially going to do some job or going to do some task on a more or less daily basis, you got a couple of responsibilities around the house. I think that I think that there's a significant impact that a limited exposure to life has on our ability to think freely. And I think we're always capable of free thought. It's just that often the choices at our disposal for what we could think about are pretty limited. So even when we're thinking freely, often we're just picking between a small amount of choices. That's one of the things I really like about the tarot is almost every time I, you know, pick a card for myself to meditate on, and I've been doing this largely just to give myself 2 things to think about on a daily basis. Every time I do this, I'm reminded of all sorts of all sorts of things that fall outside of my regular schedule, more or less. So with this, when I was doing this, I was like, oh yeah, I should say hi to my mom. We generally keep in touch, but I'll call her up, talk to her on the phone. It's like me doing my everyday thing. I might not always be reminded of that. With this card, yeah, I was like reminded reminded of times in my life when I was hanging out with people that were like drinking a lot of alcohol, considering how those relationships have turned out, who I'm still friends with, who I've drifted apart from, kind of, thinking about whether alcohol or how much of a role alcohol played in that. But again, it's like maybe that's not a thought that I would have just come across as I was normally exposed to my day-to-day things. So yeah, I think it's really valuable too. I wish there was I'd like to maybe come up with a good name for that. Like it's like there's like a lottery like element to it, or certainly like the Wheel of Fortune. You know, that's one of the cards. But like, because mindfulness is certainly mindfulness is certainly a useful, like mindfulness meditation, let's say, is certainly I think a useful tool in a well-rounded life, in, in a life where each task you approach gets the benefit of being, you know, seriously considered from more than just one or two angles, where it gets like worldly consideration. But yeah, so mindfulness is certainly a valuable tool for that. But yeah, when our choices of what we could be mindful of is limited to just the events that happen to occur to us, it kind of, yeah, I feel like it seriously limits the ability of that tool of mindfulness to produce, you know, spectacular results. Nonetheless, these are the cards for today. Watch out for two-time and alcoholics that are starting to take interest in new emotional experiences, and yeah, opportunities lie in either the 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 nature, the natural outgrowths of the world, or in a maternal individual. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.